The rain had just stopped when the old black man stepped out of the yellow cab. He moved slowly, favoring his left leg as he reached for his small brown suitcase. The cab driver didn't even look back as he drove away, leaving the man standing, alone on the sidewalk in front of the Grand Metropolitan Hotel. Samuel looked up at the towering glass building that stretched 30 floors into the cloudy afternoon sky. Golden letters spelled out the hotel's name above the entrance, where doormen in crisp uniforms helped wealthy guests from expensive cars. He adjusted his simple gray cardigan and started walking toward the main entrance. The doorman, a young man with perfectly styled hair, was busy helping a woman in a fur coat out of her black Mercedes. When Samuel approached the golden revolving door, the doorman glanced at him and quickly stepped in front of him. "Excuse me, sir," the doorman said, not really looking at Samuel's face. "Are you looking for something?" Samuel smiled politely. "Yes, I'm checking into the hotel." The doorman's eyebrows went up. He looked Samuel up and down, taking in the worn cardigan, the comfortable walking shoes, and the old suitcase. "Oh, I think there might be some confusion. The bus station is about 3 blocks that way," he said, pointing down the street. "There's also a nice little motel called Comfort Inn about a mile from here, much more reasonable." "Thank you," Samuel said calmly, "but I have a reservation here." The doorman's smile became stiff. "Well, okay then." He stepped aside but didn't open the door for Samuel like he had for the other guests. Inside the lobby, Samuel felt the cool air conditioning and heard soft piano music playing from somewhere nearby. The floor was made of polished marble that reflected the light from crystal chandeliers hanging high above. Expensive leather chairs were arranged around glass tables, where well-dressed people sat sipping coffee and talking in quiet voices. As Samuel walked across the lobby, conversations seemed to pause. A woman in a pearl necklace whispered something to her husband, who turned to stare. A family with 2 young children moved their kids closer to them as Samuel passed by their table. The front desk was a long counter made of dark wood, with 3 people in navy blue uniforms standing behind it. Samuel approached the closest one, a young woman with blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun. "Good afternoon," Samuel said pleasantly. "I'd like to check in, please. The name is Washington." The woman's smile faltered for just a moment. "Washington?" She typed something into her computer, frowning slightly. "I'm sorry, I'm not seeing anything under that name. Could you spell it for me?" "Ashington," Samuel said patiently. She typed again, her frown deepening. That's strange. Are you sure you made the reservation for today? And for this hotel?" "Yes, I'm quite sure." A man in his 30s wearing an expensive suit walked up behind the counter. His name tag read, "Assistant Manager." He looked at Samuel with obvious suspicion. "Is there a problem here?" he asked the blonde woman. "This gentleman says he has a reservation, but I can't find it in our system," she replied. The assistant manager turned to Samuel. "Sir, I have to ask, are you certain you made a reservation at the Grand Metropolitan? We're a 5-star hotel and our rooms start at $400 a night." Samuel nodded. "Yes, I'm aware of your rates. And you understand that we require a major credit card for incidentals, which could be several $100s? That won't be a problem." The assistant manager exchanged a look with the blonde woman. "Well, even if we could find your reservation, I'm afraid we're completely booked tonight. There's a big conference in town and we don't have a single room available." Samuel glanced around the lobby. "It doesn't seem very busy." "Trust me, sir. We're at full capacity, but I'd be happy to call some other hotels in the area that might have something available. There's a nice Holiday Inn about 20 minutes from here." An older couple standing nearby was clearly listening to the conversation. The woman, wearing a diamond bracelet that caught the lobby lights, spoke loudly enough for others to hear. "Harold, I told you this place was going downhill. Look at the kind of people they're letting in now." Her husband shook his head. "We should have stayed at the Ritz-Carlton like I suggested." More people were starting to notice the situation at the front desk. A man in a business suit approached the assistant manager. "Excuse me," the businessman said. "My family and I are checking in tomorrow for our anniversary weekend. I hope this hotel still maintains its standards. We're paying good money to stay somewhere exclusive." The assistant manager's face turned slightly red. "Of course, sir. We absolutely maintain the highest standards. This is just a small misunderstanding." Samuel remained calm through it all. He reached into his cardigan pocket and pulled out a credit card. "Perhaps this will help verify my reservation." The blonde woman reluctantly took the card and ran it through a machine. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw the screen, but the assistant manager quickly stepped in. "I'm sorry," he said, "but there seems to be a technical issue with our computer system. Even though your card is valid, I still can't locate your reservation. The best I can do is put you on our waiting list in case someone cancels." Samuel looked at him steadily. "How long might that take?" "Could be hours, could be all night. Really no way to know." A security guard had quietly positioned himself near the front desk. He wasn't being obvious about it, but Samuel noticed how the man kept glancing over and had his hand resting on his radio. "Tell you what," the assistant manager said, his voice getting a little louder so nearby guests could hear. "Let me call a few other places for you. I'm sure we can find something suitable." He emphasized the word suitable in a way that made its meaning clear. Samuel looked around the lobby once more. He saw the expensive artwork on the walls, the fresh flowers on every table, and the judgmental faces of the other guests. He saw the staff members who had gathered to watch the situation unfold, some shaking their heads in disapproval. "I'll wait," Samuel said simply. "Sir, I really think it would be better if—" "I said I'll wait." The assistant manager's jaw tightened. He looked at the security guard and gave a small nod. The guard took a step closer. "Sir," the guard said, "is there a problem here?" Samuel turned to face him. "No problem at all. I'm just waiting to check into my room." "Well, if you don't have a reservation—" "I do have a reservation," the assistant manager interrupted. "Look, I've been more than patient here. I've explained that we can't find any reservation and we're completely booked. I've offered to help you find somewhere else to stay. I really think it's time for you to accept that this isn't the right place for you." The lobby had grown quiet. Even the piano music seemed softer now. Everyone was watching, waiting to see what would happen next. Samuel took a deep breath and looked around at all the faces staring at him. Some looked annoyed, others seemed almost afraid. A few appeared embarrassed by what they were witnessing, but none of them spoke up. "All right," Samuel said finally. "What's the smallest room you have available?" The assistant manager blinked in surprise. "I told you, we don't have any—" "Check again." There was something in Samuel's voice that made the man pause. After a long moment, he turned to the computer and started typing. "Well," he said reluctantly, "there might be one small room available. It's not very nice. It's next to the ice machine and the elevator. Pretty noisy. Really not suitable for most of our guests. I'll take it." The assistant manager stared at him for a moment, then shrugged. "Fine, but I'll need to see multiple forms of ID and a credit card authorization for $500 in incidentals." Samuel quietly provided everything requested. As he signed the paperwork, he could feel dozens of eyes still watching him. The assistant manager handed him a key card with obvious reluctance. "Room 412, he said. "Elevators are over there. Ice machine is right down the hall from your room, so you'll definitely hear it all night." "Thank you," Samuel said politely. He picked up his small suitcase and walked toward the elevators. Behind him, conversation slowly resumed, but he could still hear whispered comments and see heads turning to watch him go. As the elevator doors closed, Samuel Washington allowed himself a small, knowing smile. The real story was just beginning. Room 412 was everything the assistant manager had promised it would be. Small, cramped, and right next to the ice machine that hummed and clicked every few minutes. Samuel set his suitcase on the narrow bed and looked around the tiny space. The carpet was worn, the paint on the walls was chipped in places, and the single window looked out at the hotel's air conditioning units. He had stayed in this hotel many times before, but never in a room like this one. Samuel unpacked his few belongings and hung his spare shirt in the small closet. As he did, he heard voices in the hallway outside his door. "I can't believe they actually gave him a room," a woman was saying. "Derek should have just called the police," a man replied. "Said he was causing a disturbance or something. Well, At least they stuck him up here where the important guests won't see him. Samuel listened as their footsteps faded down the hall. He sat on the edge of the bed and rubbed his knee, which was still sore from his recent surgery. After a few minutes of rest, he decided to go downstairs and get something to eat. The hotel restaurant was on the second floor, with large windows overlooking the city. Samuel took the elevator down and walked into the elegant dining room. Crystal glasses sparkled on white tablecloths, and servers in black uniforms moved quietly between the tables. The hostess, a young woman with dark hair, looked up as Samuel approached her station, and I help you?" she asked, though her tone suggested she'd rather not. "I'd like a table for one, please." She glanced around the restaurant, which was only about half full. "I'm sorry, but we're completely booked tonight. You might try the coffee shop in the lobby." Samuel looked past her at the empty tables. "What about that table by the window? That's reserved, and the one next to it? Also reserved." Samuel nodded slowly. "I see. What about room service?" The hostess seemed relieved. "Yes, room service is available until 10 o'clock. You can call from your room." Back in room 412, Samuel called room service and ordered a simple dinner. The person on the phone sounded confused when he gave his room number. "Room 412, are you sure?" "Yes, I'm sure." "Okay, we'll have that up to you in about 45 minutes. An hour and a half later, someone finally knocked on Samuel's door. A young man in a wrinkled uniform stood in the hallway holding a tray. "Sorry. It took so long," the server said, though he didn't sound sorry at all. "Kitchen was really busy tonight." Samuel looked at the tray. The food was barely warm and his coffee was cold. The salad looked like it had been sitting under a heat lamp for hours. "Thank you," Samuel said, and gave the young man a $5 tip. The server looked surprised by the tip but took it quickly and left without another word. The next morning, Samuel went down to the lobby to get a newspaper. As he walked across the marble floor, he noticed how the staff members watched him. The cleaning crew stopped their work to stare. The front desk employees whispered to each other behind the counter. Samuel picked up a newspaper from the rack, near the concierge desk. The concierge, a middle-aged man with graying hair, looked up from his computer. "Sir, those newspapers are for hotel guests only." Samuel showed him his room key. "I'm in room 412. The concierge's expression didn't change. "There's a charge for the newspaper, $5. $5 for a newspaper that cost $1 at the newsstand outside? Hotel policy." Samuel handed him $5 and took the newspaper to one of the leather chairs in the lobby. As he read, he listened to the conversations around him and watched how the staff treated different guests. A wealthy-looking couple approached the front desk, and immediately 3 staff members rushed to help them. Their luggage was taken care of. They were offered complimentary drinks, and the manager himself came out to welcome them personally. A few minutes later, a young black businessman in an expensive suit walked up to the same desk. The staff's entire attitude changed. They were polite but cold. When he asked about upgrading his room, they told him nothing was available. When he wanted to make a dinner reservation, they said the restaurant was fully booked. Samuel watched this happen and felt a familiar anger rise in his chest, but he kept his expression calm and continued reading his overpriced newspaper. Later, that morning, he decided to take a walk around the hotel to stretch his sore leg. He rode the elevator down to the basement level, where the employee areas were located. As he walked down a long hallway, he heard voices coming from an open door. "Did you see the old guy in 412? Someone was saying. "Yeah. Derek told us about him. Can't believe he actually paid for a room. Won't be the first time someone like that tried to sneak into places where they don't belong. At least Derek stuck him in the worst room we have. And did you see how much they charged him for incidentals? $500. There was laughter from inside the room. Best part is he'll probably complain about everything, and then we can say he's being difficult and ask him to leave." Samuel stood quietly in the hallway, listening to every word. These were his employees, talking about a guest, about him, with such disrespect and cruelty. He walked back to the elevator and returned to his room. From his window, he could see people walking on the street below, going about their normal lives. He wondered how many of them had ever been treated the way he was being treated right now. That afternoon, Samuel went to the hotel's business center to use the computers. The attendant, a young woman with red hair, looked annoyed when he walked in. "The computers are for business guests only," she said. "I am a guest. Do you have any business here? Like, actual business?" Samuel looked at her for a long moment. "Yes, I do have business here." Reluctantly, she let him use a computer for 30 minutes. Samuel typed quietly, sending several emails and making notes about what he had observed. The business center attendant kept glancing over at him, as if she expected him to break something or cause trouble. When his 30 minutes were up, she practically pushed him out of the chair. "Time's up. Other guests need to use the computer now." Samuel looked around the empty business center. "What other guests?" "Well, there might be other guests who need it." As Samuel walked back to the elevator, he heard the assistant manager, Derek, talking to someone on the phone near the front desk. No, we handled it perfectly," Derek was saying. "Guy tried to cause problems, but we put him in his place, stuck him in 412 with a huge incidental charge. He'll probably leave on his own by tomorrow." Derek laughed at something the person on the other end said. "Trust me, I know how to deal with these situations. You have to be firm but polite. Can't give them any reason to complain, but you make it clear they're not welcome. It's all about maintaining standards, you know?" Samuel pressed the elevator button and waited. When the doors opened, Derek was still on the phone, still laughing about how cleverly he had handled this situation. That evening, Samuel ordered room service again. This time the food arrived cold, and when he called to complain, the person on the phone acted like it was his fault. "Well, sir, room 412 is pretty far from the kitchen. Food's bound to get cold on the way up there. Other rooms on the 4th floor get hot food. I'm sorry you're not satisfied. We can offer you a discount on your next order." Samuel declined the discount and ate his cold dinner while looking out at the city lights. Tomorrow, he decided, things were going to change. He had seen enough. He had heard enough. He had experienced firsthand how his hotel treated people who didn't look like they belonged. Samuel pulled out his phone and made a call. "It's me," he said when someone answered. "Yes, I'm still here. Tomorrow morning I want you to set up a meeting with the regional director. Make sure Derek Thompson is there too. And call the press. I think they'll be very interested in this story." He hung up and smiled for the first time since he'd arrived at the Grand Metropolitan Hotel. Tomorrow was going to be a very different day. Samuel woke up early the next morning to the sound of the ice machine clicking and humming outside his door. He had barely slept, not because of the noise, but because his mind was busy thinking about everything he had seen and heard over the past 2 days. He got dressed slowly, putting on the same simple clothes he had worn since arriving. His knee was feeling better today, so he decided to take a walk around the hotel before most of the guests and staff were awake. The lobby was quiet at 6 in the morning. Only a few employees were around, preparing for the busy day ahead. Samuel sat in one of the leather chairs and watched them work. He noticed things that most guests would never see. The cleaning crew was rushing to finish their work before the morning shift arrived. They looked tired, like they had been working all night. One woman was moving slowly, favoring her back as she mopped the marble floors. Samuel watched the front desk staff setting up for the day. They were gossiping about guests, laughing about complaints they had received, and making jokes about people who couldn't afford to stay there. One young man was mimicking the way an elderly guest walked, and the others were laughing. Around 7 o'clock, the morning manager arrived. Samuel recognized him as Derek, the assistant manager from the day before. Derek walked through the lobby like he owned the place, checking on the staff and making sure everything looked perfect for the wealthy guests who would soon be coming down for breakfast. Derek stopped at the front desk and started going through the night's reports. Samuel could hear him from across the lobby. "What's the status on the guy in 412?" Derek asked. "Still here," one of the desk clerks replied. "Ordered room service twice yesterday. Both times the food was cold by the time it got to him." Derek laughed. "Good. Maybe he'll get the message and check out early. Save us all some trouble." Samuel stood up and walked toward the elevator, but Derek noticed him. "Good morning, sir," Derek said loudly, his voice fake and cheerful. "I hope you slept well. No problems with the ice machine, I hope." "No problems," Samuel replied calmly. Good, good. Well, if you need anything at all, just let us know. We want all our guests to be comfortable. The way Derek said, the word comfortable made it clear that he hoped Samuel was anything but comfortable. Samuel rode the elevator up to the 5th floor and walked around the hallways, observing how the hotel operated. He saw housekeeping staff rushing from room to room, trying to clean everything perfectly before the guests woke up. Some of the rooms had "Do Not Disturb" signs, but the staff was cleaning around them anyway, making noise that would surely wake the people inside. He noticed that the rooms on the higher floors, where the more expensive suites were, got much better treatment. The housekeeping staff took their time there, working quietly and carefully. Fresh flowers were placed in the hallways, and everything was spotless. But on the lower floors, where the cheaper rooms were, the cleaning was rushed and sloppy. The carpets looked worn, the paint was chipped, and there were no fresh flowers anywhere. Samuel took the elevator down to the basement level again. He wanted to see more of how the hotel operated, behind the scenes. As he walked through the employee areas, he came across a break room where several workers were eating breakfast before their shift started. Through the open door, he could see a woman sitting alone at a table in the corner. She looked to be in her 60s, with gray hair and tired eyes. She was wearing a housekeeping uniform and eating what looked like a peanut butter sandwich. Samuel recognized her from the night before. She had been working late, cleaning the lobby while most other employees had gone home. "Excuse me," Samuel said softly, stepping into the break room. The woman looked up, surprised. The other employees stopped talking and stared at Samuel. "I'm sorry to bother you," Samuel said to the woman. "I just wanted to thank you for your hard work. I saw you cleaning the lobby last night, and you do a beautiful job." The woman's face lit up with surprise and pleasure. "Oh, thank you, sir. That's very kind of you to say. What's your name?" "Rosa," she said. "I've been working here for 12 years. 12 years. That's wonderful. You must really care about this place." Rosa nodded. "I do. I take pride in my work, even when—" She stopped herself and glanced around at the other employees who were still watching them. "Even when what?" Samuel asked gently. Rosa hesitated. "Well, sometimes it's hard, you know. Some people don't see us, don't think we matter. But I believe everyone deserves to be treated with respect, no matter what job they do or what they look like." Samuel nodded. "I couldn't agree more." One of the other employees, a young man in a maintenance uniform, spoke up. "Rosa, you probably shouldn't be talking to guests down here. Management doesn't like it." "It's okay," Samuel said. "I was just lost, looking for the elevator." The young man looked suspicious, but he pointed toward the hallway. "Elevator's that way." Samuel thanked Rosa again and left the break room, but he had learned something important. Not everyone in the hotel agreed with how he was being treated. There were good people here like Rosa, who believed in treating everyone with dignity. Later that morning, Samuel went to the hotel restaurant for breakfast. He expected the same treatment as the night before, but he wanted to see if anything had changed. The hostess was different this time, an older woman with kind eyes. When Samuel approached, she smiled warmly. "Good morning. Table for one?" "Yes, please." She led him to a nice table by the window and handed him a menu. "Your server will be right with you." Samuel was surprised. This woman was treating him like any other guest. But his surprise didn't last long. A few minutes later, Derek appeared at his table. "Good morning again," Derek said, his smile tight and fake. "I hope you're enjoying your stay with us." "Yes, thank you." Derek glanced around the restaurant, then leaned down slightly. "I just wanted to let you know that we've had some complaints from other guests. Nothing serious, of course, but some people are feeling uncomfortable. I'm sure you understand." Samuel looked at him steadily. "No, I don't understand." "What kind of complaints?" Derek's smile became even more forced, even more. "Well, some guests have mentioned that they're not sure this hotel is the right fit for everyone. We pride ourselves on maintaining a certain atmosphere." "And what atmosphere is that?" "You know, exclusive. High-end. Our guests pay a lot of money to stay here, and they expect a certain level of service and environment. Samuel nodded slowly. I see. And you think I'm disturbing that environment? I'm not saying that, of course. I'm just suggesting that perhaps you might be more comfortable somewhere else. Somewhere more suited to your needs. Before Samuel could respond, his server arrived. It was a young woman who looked nervous as she glanced between Samuel and Derek. I'm sorry to interrupt, she said quietly. Are you ready to order, sir? Derek straightened up. Actually, I'm not sure we can accommodate breakfast right now. The kitchen is having some issues this morning. The server looked confused, but we just served the table next to. The kitchen is having issues, Derek repeated firmly, staring at the young woman until she nodded. I'm sorry, sir, she said to Samuel. Maybe you could try again later. Samuel looked around the restaurant. Other guests were eating breakfast, servers were bringing out plates of food, and everything seemed to be running normally. That's all right, Samuel said. I understand. He stood up and walked out of the restaurant. Behind him, he heard Derek talking quietly to the hostess who had seated him. Next time, check with me before seating anyone who doesn't look like they belong here. Samuel stopped walking and turned around. Derek was still talking to the hostess, who looked uncomfortable and embarrassed. I don't care how polite they seem, Derek continued. We have standards to maintain. The hostess glanced at Samuel and saw him watching. Her face turned red with embarrassment. Samuel walked back to the elevator, his mind racing. He had now seen and heard enough to understand exactly how his hotel operated when he wasn't there as the owner. The discrimination wasn't just one or two bad employees. It was a system, encouraged by management and accepted by most of the staff. But he had also met people like Rosa and the kind hostess who treated everyone with respect. Those were the people he wanted to keep. Those were the people who understood what hospitality really meant. As Samuel rode the elevator back to room 412, he thought about tomorrow. Tomorrow, everything would change. But today, he was still just an old black man in a cheap cardigan, learning the truth about his own business. He pulled out his phone and made another call. It's me again, he said. Move the meeting up to this afternoon. I've seen enough. Samuel spent the rest of the morning in his small room, making phone calls and taking notes about everything he had witnessed. Each conversation was brief and professional, but anyone listening carefully would have noticed the authority in his voice. I need the quarterly reports for all properties, he said into his phone. And get me the customer satisfaction surveys for the Grand Metropolitan specifically. I want to see the patterns. He hung up and immediately dialed another number. It's me. How quickly can you arrange a surprise inspection team? Good. I want them here by this afternoon, but they shouldn't identify themselves until I give the signal. Around noon, Samuel decided to venture out of his room again. He wanted to see how the hotel operated during the busy lunch period. As he walked through the lobby, he noticed it was much more crowded now. Business people sat in the leather chairs having meetings. Families checked in and out, and the staff moved quickly to serve everyone. But Samuel noticed something else. The way the staff treated guests depended entirely on how those guests looked and dressed. Wealthy-looking people got immediate attention, warm smiles, and personal service. Anyone who looked ordinary or less affluent was treated politely but coldly. He watched a young couple approach the front desk. They were dressed casually, in jeans and sneakers, carrying backpacks like they might be tourists on a budget. The desk clerk barely looked up when they asked about extending their stay. I'm sorry, but we're completely booked, the clerk said without even checking the computer. But we called this morning and someone said you had availability, the young woman said. Well, things change quickly. You might try the Holiday Inn down the street. Samuel knew that wasn't true. He had heard Derek talking that morning about several rooms that were available, but being held back in case any VIP guests arrived unexpectedly. A few minutes later, a man in an expensive suit approached the same desk clerk. Before he could even speak, the clerk was smiling broadly. Good afternoon, sir. How can I help you today? I don't have a reservation, but I was wondering if you had any rooms available for tonight. Let me check for you right away. The clerk typed rapidly on the computer. Yes, sir, we have several excellent rooms available. Would you prefer a city view or garden view? Samuel shook his head and walked toward the hotel's business center. He wanted to document what he was seeing, but first he needed to check on something. The same red-haired attendant was working in the business center. When she saw Samuel approaching, her face showed obvious annoyance. 30 minutes maximum, she said before he could speak. And there's a fee today, $5 for computer use. Yesterday you didn't mention a fee. New policy. Samuel paid the $5 and sat down at a computer. He opened his email and started typing a detailed report of everything he had observed. As he worked, he listened to the attendant talking on the phone. Yeah, he's back again, she was saying quietly. I don't know why Derek doesn't just ask him to leave. This is supposed to be an exclusive hotel. Samuel finished his email and sent it to his personal assistant with instructions to forward it to the board of directors. Then he stood up to leave. Excuse me, the attendant said. You need to clear the browser history and sign out properly. Samuel looked at the computer screen, which was already signed out. It's already done. Well, I need to check it myself. Hotel policy. She walked over and spent several minutes examining the computer, as if she expected to find something wrong. Finding nothing, she waved him away dismissively. Samuel left the business center and walked toward the hotel's main restaurant. It was lunchtime, and he wanted to see if he could actually get a meal this time. The same hostess from the morning was there, the kind woman who had treated him with respect. When she saw him, she smiled genuinely. Hello again. Would you like to try lunch today? Yes, please. She started to lead him to a table, but Derek appeared from somewhere behind the hostess station. Patricia, Derek said to the hostess, I need to speak with you for a moment. He pulled her aside and spoke to her in a low voice, but Samuel could hear every word. I thought I made it clear this morning that certain guests need to be handled differently. But sir, he's staying in the hotel. He has every right to eat in the restaurant. Patricia, you've been here for 15 years. You know how things work. We have standards to maintain. Our regular customers expect a certain level of exclusivity. Patricia looked uncomfortable. I understand, sir, but no buts. If you want to keep working here, you'll follow hotel policy. Derek walked back to Samuel with his fake smile firmly in place. I'm terribly sorry, but we're completely booked for lunch today. Perhaps you could try our coffee shop. It's much more casual. Samuel looked past Derek at the restaurant, which was only half full. It doesn't look very busy. Well, we have several large parties coming in shortly. Reservations that were made weeks in advance. Patricia stood behind Derek looking ashamed and avoiding Samuel's eyes. I understand, Samuel said quietly. Thank you anyway. As he walked away, he heard Derek talking to Patricia again. Look, I know it seems harsh, but we have to think about the big picture. Our real customers pay good money to eat here. They don't want to be uncomfortable during their meal. But sir, that man hasn't done anything wrong. He's been polite and quiet. Patricia, it's not about what he's done. It's about maintaining the right atmosphere. You understand, don't you? Samuel heard Patricia sigh. Yes, sir. I understand. Samuel walked to the coffee shop, which was in a corner of the lobby. It was much more casual than the main restaurant, with simple tables and chairs instead of white tablecloths and crystal glasses. The woman working behind the counter was young, maybe in her early 20s. She looked up when Samuel approached and gave him a genuine smile. Hi there. What can I get for you? Just a sandwich and coffee, please. Sure thing. Turkey or ham? Turkey is fine. The young woman, whose name tag said Jenny, made his sandwich quickly and poured his coffee. That'll be $12. Samuel paid and found a small table near the window. The sandwich was actually quite good, and the coffee was hot and fresh. As he ate, Jenny came over to check on him. How's everything tasting? Very good, thank you. Great. Let me know if you need anything else. It was the first time since arriving at the hotel that someone had treated him like a normal customer. No suspicion, no attitude, just simple human kindness. Samuel was finishing his sandwich when he heard familiar voices at a table nearby. Derek was sitting with two other men in suits, having what looked like a business lunch. The key, Derek was saying, is to never give them anything concrete to complain about. You have to be subtle, make them feel unwelcome without actually saying anything directly discriminatory. One of the other men nodded. That's smart. No lawsuits that way. Exactly. Like this old guy who checked in yesterday. Obviously doesn't belong here, but we can't just throw him out. So we gave him the worst room. Charged him maximum incidentals, made sure his food took forever and arrived cold. Eventually, he'll get tired of the poor service and leave on his own. The third man laughed. And if anyone asks, you were just following standard procedures. Right. It's all about maintaining standards while covering yourself legally. I've been doing this for years and I've never had a single complaint stick. Samuel continued eating his sandwich, but every word was burning into his memory. This wasn't just bad customer service. This was a deliberate, systematic approach to discrimination, refined over years and taught to other managers. He pulled out his phone and sent a text message. Meeting at 3 p.m. Bring everything. It's time. When Samuel finished his lunch, Jenny came over to clear his table. Thanks for coming in, she said cheerfully. I hope you'll visit us again. Samuel looked at this young woman who had shown him such simple kindness in a place where kindness seemed to be in short supply. What's your last name, Jenny? Miller. Jenny Miller. Why? No reason. You just remind me of someone very special. Jenny smiled, not understanding but pleased by the compliment. Samuel stood up and walked back toward the elevators. In a few hours, Derek and everyone else would understand just how special kindness really was, and just how expensive cruelty could be. At exactly 3 o'clock that afternoon, Samuel walked out of the elevator wearing a completely different outfit. Gone were the simple cardigan and worn shoes. Instead, he wore a perfectly tailored navy blue suit, a crisp white shirt, and Italian leather shoes that probably cost more than most people made in a month. The transformation was stunning. The same man who had been dismissed and ignored for 3 days now looked like exactly what he was, a successful businessman who commanded respect. But Samuel wasn't alone. Walking beside him was a woman in a sharp black suit carrying a leather briefcase. Behind them came 2 more people in professional clothing and finally, a man with a camera and press badge. The lobby suddenly became very quiet. Guests stopped their conversations and stared. The front desk staff froze in place, their mouths hanging open in shock. Derek was standing near the concierge desk, talking to a guest about dinner reservations. When he looked up and saw Samuel approaching, his face went completely white. Good afternoon, Derek, Samuel said in a calm, clear voice that carried across the lobby. I believe we have a meeting scheduled. Derek stammered, unable to form words. The guest he had been helping looked confused and stepped away. The woman with the briefcase stepped forward. My name is Victoria Chen, Regional Director for the Washington Hotel Group. This is Mr. Samuel Washington, Chairman and CEO of our company. A wave of shocked whispers swept through the lobby. Guests pulled out their phones to record what was happening. Hotel staff members appeared from every direction, drawn by the commotion. Mr. Washington owns this hotel, Victoria continued, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear, along with 47 other luxury properties worldwide. For the past 3 days, he has been conducting an unannounced inspection of this facility. Derek's legs looked like they might give out. He grabbed the edge of the concierge desk to steady himself. Samuel stepped forward, his presence now commanding the attention of everyone in the lobby. For 3 days, Samuel said, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being heard. I have experienced firsthand how this hotel treats guests who don't look like they belong. I was denied dinner reservations while tables sat empty. I was given cold food after being made to wait hours for room service. I was charged $5 for a newspaper that cost $1 outside, and I was repeatedly told that perhaps I would be more comfortable somewhere else. The lobby was dead silent except for the soft clicking of camera shutters. But more importantly, Samuel continued, I have witnessed how staff members at this hotel systematically discriminate against guests based on their appearance, their race, and their perceived wealth. I have heard employees mock guests behind their backs. I have seen young couples turned away while rooms sat vacant, and I have listened to managers teach other managers how to discriminate without getting caught. Derek tried to speak. Mr. Washington, sir, there must be some misunderstanding. Samuel held up his hand for silence. Derek Thompson, you are terminated immediately. Security will escort you from the building, and you will never work for any Washington Hotel Group property again. 2 security guards stepped forward and positioned themselves on either side of Derek, who looked like he might faint. But sir, Derek pleaded, I was just maintaining standards. I was protecting the hotel's reputation. You were destroying it, Samuel replied firmly. This hotel's reputation should be built on excellence in service to all guests, not on making people feel unwelcome because of how they look. Samuel turned to address the front desk staff, several of whom were crying. To the employees who participated in this discrimination, you are also terminated effective immediately. This company has zero tolerance for treating any guest with disrespect. Adhering paused and looked around the lobby at the faces watching him. However, Samuel continued, I also met employees who showed kindness and professionalism even when they thought no one important was watching. Rosa Martinez from housekeeping, who has worked here for 12 years with dignity and pride. You are promoted to head of housekeeping with a 20% salary increase. Rosa had appeared from somewhere in the crowd of staff members. She was crying, but now they were tears of joy and relief. Patricia Williams, the restaurant hostess who treated me with courtesy and respect, even when her manager told her not to. You are promoted to restaurant manager. Patricia stepped forward, looking stunned and grateful. And Jenny Miller from the coffee shop, who showed me simple human kindness when kindness was hard to find. You are being transferred to our flagship property in New York with a substantial promotion and raise. Jenny was in the crowd of employees, tears streaming down her face as other workers patted her back in congratulation. Samuel walked to the center of the lobby, where everyone could see and hear him clearly. Let me be very clear about something, he said. I didn't go through this experience to punish anyone or to make a point. I did it because I genuinely care about what happens in my hotels. Every guest who walks through these doors deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, whether they're wearing a $1,000 suit or a cardigan from a thrift store. He looked around at the guests who were watching, many of them still recording with their phones. To our guests, I want to personally apologize for any discrimination or poor treatment you may have witnessed or experienced at this hotel. This is not who we are, and it's not who we will ever be again. Victoria Chen stepped forward with a thick folder of documents. Effective immediately, she announced, this hotel will implement new training programs for all staff members. We will have regular diversity and inclusion workshops, and we will have mystery shoppers of all backgrounds testing our service to ensure that every guest receives the same excellent treatment. Samuel nodded. We will also be reviewing our hiring practices and our management training. Any employee found discriminating against guests or other employees will be terminated immediately, regardless of their position. A reporter who had been taking notes stepped forward. Mr. Washington, what made you decide to do this inspection personally? Samuel thought for a moment. Because statistics and reports can only tell you so much. Sometimes you have to experience something yourself to truly understand it. And what I experienced here over the past 3 days was unacceptable. Another reporter raised her hand. Will you be doing similar inspections at your other properties? Yes, Samuel said without hesitation. Every hotel in our group will be evaluated to ensure we're living up to our values. And those values are simple. Treat every person who walks through our doors with respect, kindness, and excellent service. Derek was being escorted toward the exit by security. As he passed Samuel, he stopped. Sir, please, Derek said desperately. I've worked in this industry for 15 years. I have a family. I was just trying to do my job the way I was taught. Samuel looked at him with something that might have been sadness. Derek, your job was to make guests feel welcome, not to decide who deserves to feel welcome. I hope you learn from this experience and become a better person because of it. As Derek was led away, Samuel turned back to the remaining staff members. For those of you who are staying, understand that this is a new beginning. We will provide you with the training and support you need to succeed. But we will also hold you to the highest standards of professionalism and respect for all people. The Brahim lobby gradually began to return to normal, as guests went back to their conversations and staff members returned to their duties. But there was a different feeling in the air now, a sense that something important had changed. Samuel walked over to Rosa, who was still wiping tears from her eyes. 12 years is a long time, he said gently. Thank you for caring about this place even when it didn't seem to care about you. Thank you, sir, Rosa said. Thank you for seeing us. Samuel smiled. Everyone deserves to be seen. As he walked toward the elevator to finally check into his proper suite, Samuel reflected on the past 3 days. It had been painful and humiliating, but it had also been necessary because sometimes the most important lessons can only be learned by walking in someone else's shoes. And sometimes the most powerful changes come from understanding what it feels like to be powerless. The Grand Metropolitan Hotel would never be the same again. And that was exactly what Samuel Washington had hoped for.